How did you get started in this industry?
Back in South Africa, I was a keyboard player in very many various bands and situations since I was 16 years old. Um, and then started playing professionally right out of school. And right out of school ended up with one of South Africa's biggest artists as her keyboard player. And then I was with her for about 5 or 6 years. Became her music director. And that was really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a keyboard player. Then in '98, I moved to LA to go to the Musicians Institute. And of course, well, not of course, I guess I got there not knowing what to expect. But after a couple of months, it was clear that was not a smart career choice. So, so I went to. I had a friend who was working in LA at the time, and he was assisting a composer, the late Daniel Licht, and Dan was, kind enough to take me on as an engineer. So I went on basically as his recording and mix engineer, not really knowing too much about recording or mixing. But I did it and kind of saw what music for picture was about through Dan. And from there, I ended up at a company called Machine Head Sound Design and Music. They were a commercial music house. We did sound design and music for commercials, and we did a couple of films while I was there. Then I went freelance after that for a while, mainly still working in the commercial advertising world, and then got into reality TV and doing tracks for reality TV. And one day in the trades, I heard about Bleeding Fingers. So I sent my stuff over and got an interview and ended up here.
Bleeding Fingers is co-founded by Hans Zimmer, correct?
That is correct.
How often? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. Go ahead, Mike.
How often does he get to work with the artists that are involved, or is he just kind of one of those silent partner types?
It varies on a project by project basis, and also his availability, and but he knows what's going on and who's doing what, as far as I know. He's the remote. We're on the same campus as Remote Control, so we're 2 buildings over from Hans's building, with Extreme Music in between us. And Bleeding Fingers is Extreme Music and Hans together made Bleeding Fingers, and Sony Music, I believe. You might want to check that out to be 100% sure, but I think that's how it works. So yeah, he's there, but I'm in a building full of some of the top composers working today. I think there's 14 of us in the building, and we all hang out and compare notes and listen to each other's stuff and perform on each other's stuff, and so there's a lot of that going on as well.
What are some of the projects that have gone through there where you've gotten to work with other composers on?
The Simpsons. I've done some stuff with the Simpsons. I'm trying to think what else I've done. There was a show for Stars called Insomnia that I did with one of the other composers here. There's a movie coming out called The Parts You Lose that I contributed to with one of the other composers here. So it's just a really great creative space, and we get to do a lot of different stuff.
When you compare notes, do you feel like you're gaining even more knowledge and becoming an even better composer in this space?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Because it's we're not. It's not like we're competitive,
Hmm.
but there is that when you're in someone's room and you hear something, you can just say, "Ooh, how did you get that sound?" And then you can see how that was created, and then you can either take it a step further, or you can take it a step further, or you can, try the same thing, or put your 5 cents on the same sound, or so you're just learning from all these great people who come from very different backgrounds and actually different countries too, and you can apply everything that you learn from them to what you're doing yourself.
When you're trying to create a unique sound for either a TV series or for a film, when do you know you need a very unique sound, or does it come naturally, or is it something that just happens by accident? You're like, oh, I like the way that sounds. Let me put that in there.
Um, when you talk to directors, and hopefully they have the vision for what they want for the film,
Hopefully.
and that includes the music, um, and so they can be a really good guide in that respect. But when you're creating something unique, a lot of the times you have an idea and you try. Well, this is how it is with me. I have an idea and I try the idea, and invariably something else happens, and you kind of go, "Oh, hang on a second. I think that's what we need." That's not what I intended, but I think this is working. So sometimes it's a happy mistake, but a lot of the times, just the process of trying to get the sound that's in your head
Hmm.
coming out of the speakers will create some kind of different thing that you never thought of that works. Hopefully, a lot of sometimes it comes easy, sometimes you slug at it for days. It all, you never know. And then a lot of that is also dictated by picture.
Hmm.
It's dictated by the look of the picture and what kind of a movie it is. And um, but I think I always try and do something different. I never really studied. So if I'm doing guitar stuff, I'm approaching it not as a guitarist. I'm approaching it as a keyboard player who's playing guitar. So instead of playing the whole chord, I might play one string at a time, but 6 strings of the guitar. So yes, it sounds like a guitar, but it's not. There's something a little bit different about it, and I try and use that to my advantage.
Uh, the the film that I was reached out to interview you for is called The Package, and when you say that yeah, yeah, I didn't know a tactful way to segue into a film with the material that's in it. So, um,
Yes.
when you say that when you need something visual, when you have a comedic film, how what kind of headspace do you get in to score something that's kind of off the wall like this film is, but also has some tender moments? It seems like it would be pulling at two different parts of your brain to compose this thing successfully.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can start that answer by saying that comedy is a very different kettle of fish.
Hmm.
Um, it's pretty difficult. Comedy is pretty hard to get right. And I think for the package, for just right out of the gates, the performances were really very good. I mean, I think the kids were very good, and I really enjoyed the performances. So a lot of it was just adding to that, and trying to not get in the way of those performances. Then in terms of the comedy stuff versus the tender moments, I think once you have the palette, once it took a while for me to come up with the right palette. I tried a more electronic approach early on, and we didn't feel that was working. It was, it was working, but it wasn't quite right because they were in the outdoors and they were camping, and so with more experimentation, we ended up with the palette. I think the main instrument that was used the most was various processed electric pianos, and I think once I had the comedy stuff down, then when it came to the more tender moments, I could just use that same electric piano, but maybe not distort it as much or not transform it as much into something else, and that seemed to work well.
About how many times does a movie have to be played, or do you have to sit down and watch a movie before you're all the way through your process?
That's hard to say. What happens, what I find, what I like to do is I'll watch something from start to finish with whatever is in there, whatever the director wants me to see the first time, to react to, and then I'll actually spend a couple of days just thinking about it before I even write a note. And then I'll try and I'll try and work, like, find the main scenes and work with those main scenes and come up with a palette, and then it's all the way through, like populating the rest of the score with music and trying. But in terms of how many times, I can't even. I've lost count. You just keep going and until it's right. I mean, I think I scored this over roughly a 2-month period, maybe a little less. But then you mix. You're going to the mix and you're mixing it and you're spending however many days at the mix, and then you're going to the dub and you're spending however many days at the dub watching it. So it's a lot of times. And the great thing with this film is that it never got old. We were laughing every time we watched it. We were laughing. It was really a pleasure to work on.
Something I've always wanted to ask a composer, and I always forget every time I interview someone to ask this. When you're scoring a film that has a lot of quick cuts, if it has an action scene where the camera angle is transitioning like every couple seconds, how do you score a scene overall that has so many quick cuts in it? Is it you just trying to capture the overall feel of the moment, or are you trying to get every frame has to have its musical moment?
There's a couple of answers. Well, there's not a couple of answers. I guess the question is that I would ask is, what is the sound design doing? Because a lot of the time, those quick cuts are punctuated with sound design, whooshes and like a lot of sound effects will cover that. Mm-hmm. So with a score, sometimes you tend to not score those cuts at all, and just have something that's playing underneath all the sound design and all the cuts, and just have something that's continuous but builds. Mm-hmm. So I would say that it varies. It varies movie by movie with how you would approach that. But there also are times where you incorporate sound design into the music, and you make some sort of musical element on each and every cut. It all depends on what the film needs. Sometimes you just experiment with it too. Mm-hmm. And it only what actually happens only comes out right at the end, when everybody's done with their creative input. So when the sound designers are done and the mix engineers are done and everybody has had a creative input on a specific scene like that, mm-hmm. And you've carved out, everyone's carved out their place where they think their contribution is going to be most effective. And it sometimes starts as one thing and ends as another thing. That's a couple of ways of doing it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I've always wanted to ask that question. I always forget, because I'm always focused on, like, what is the project we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular piece of music that you've written that always sticks with you, that you think is your is part of your soul?
Oh, they're all part of my soul.
I guess in a way they
They're like
are.
little children. You hate to let them go. Like, it's they're never finished for me. Music, I could keep going and just keep going and keep going. It's sometimes hard to say you're done. That's why I like a deadline. Otherwise, you can just keep going. But I wouldn't say that there's one particular one that's part of my soul. I do. There's some series that I've worked on, a series that hasn't come out yet for CNN, and I wrote a lot of music that had a lot of emotional content, and I think I put a lot of my soul into that project, and I like the music that came out of it. It hasn't aired yet, but when it does, it will be out there with my soul attached.
Adam, my last question is for all those young up and coming music makers. What are your words of wisdom to those people that are trying to make it in this business?
Don't do it.
That is the first time someone's actually said that.
I'm kidding.
I should have heeded that warning years ago when I failed as an actor in Hollywood.
Oh no, really? I'm sorry to hear it.
It taught me a lot. I'm a better writer than I am an actor.
Well, there you go. Sometimes you got to go through those motions to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
For up and comers, you've got to realize that it's very hard work. It's very, very hard work. And just, try and find your sound, the sound that is yours. And once and then apply that to what it is you're trying to do, because there's so many different, there's so much different music for media at the moment, because there's so much different media. I know composers who are writing music for shows that are only on cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much web content. There's a lot of different stuff. Find what it is you really want to do the most, what you love doing, and develop your own sound and your own way of doing it. And just really keep at it. The resources online are so vast. If I'd had access to the resources that are available nowadays, it would have been the most unbelievable gift. And just keep doing it. Do it every day. Write something every day. And I guess another good one that I tell, often we have a very good intern. We have a very good intern. What's the word I'm looking for? Program? We have a lot of interns. An intern program. Mm-hmm. And the interns come in, and what I'll often show them that they've never thought about is to limit themselves with what they are writing, what they are composing with. Take one instrument, if it's a guitar or if it's a synth inside your computer, and just using that one instrument, write an entire piece of music. And that's when you will start to figure out what is your sound and what is your strong point, because in that limitation, you are going to create some stuff that you never, ever would have even thought of creating. I try and do that whenever I can.